So welcome back, everybody. We continue today's class. For that matter, we begin a brand new chapter, which is chapter 34, which the Alter Rebbe puts things in perspective as all these lofty messages, the messages which are supposed to fill our conscious mind and anchor these messages ought to be anchored in as we are as human beings, neshamis begufim, and Alter Rebbe brings sets clarity in giving us the ability to do so accordingly. But yet the message of Perek Lamed Daled, the 34th chapter, is that in this very with this very objective to give us the ability to anchor this important message of the this conviction, or this spirited conviction of Hashem Elokein, of Kel Elam, as the world and God as they are inseparable. The world is not an entity on its own. Ultimately, it's an extension. It's part of the Hashem Echad, and this is what Dira B'Tachteinim is all about, as we elaborated and expanded on this the message of Perek Lamed Gimel, 33rd chapter, in the previous classes. Again, there were multiple classes on that very chapter 33, which one could always look back and in this very website on the link box Tanya to see the previous classes and the important message, or and the fundamental message of the 33rd chapter. I will encourage equally that to tap in to the TanyaOnline.com website, which is again also hosted by the Kosher Tube. Yet it is suggestible to have it's suggestible to go there, or as well to go there, simply because it's a website solely on about this class. And as we mentioned time and again, namely the advantage additional to the ability to easily access the previous classes, but namely to appreciate the classes because of the text, which you can follow along easily. So that was basically the message of Perek Lamed Gimel. Yet, because you're dealing with something which can be, and if it's not taken in the right way, or if it's not dealt with in the right way, if it's not worked with in the right way, it could remain transcendent, which this is not to the point. The point is Dira B'Tachteinim, that it ultimately we carry the message in the tachtin within ourselves, within our own conscious mind, and it ought to reflect in every part of the Yid. And the question is, are we always in that very state completely of the excitement of Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, the way the message is in the previous chapter? Again, the way the tzaddik be'emunah in this that faith, but again, not faith as something abstract, but the appreciating and understanding and comprehensively understanding the Hashem Echad. Is it something which we live with the entire time? And so the Alter Rebbe in chapter 34 say, yeah, there was those who did live with this throughout their entire life. But are we on that level? Not necessarily. We move on, we progress in our Avodas Hashem and our consciousness and our connection, our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that we have a goal. In other words, our goal is to live that type of life that Hashem Echad should inculcate, permeate, pervade every single part of our being. But yet, till we get there, similar to the Avodah of the Avos, as the Alter Rebbe is going to point out, that this was why Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov were so special, because we say there's those who did live it, primarily the Avos Ha'olam, our forefathers, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe Rabbeinu, and the great tzaddikim, which everything about them was the demonstration of Hashem Echad, the oneness of Hashem Echad, or rather everything about them reflected better yet, the Hashem Echad, that oneness of HaKadosh, this emunah or more than emunah, that comprehensive appreciation of the Hashem Echad, or the Hashem Echad is the notion of Hashem Echad wasn't something which stood in their life in an abstract manner. For that matter, it permeated every single part of their being. In other words, their entire 24 hours, ultimately their entire life. That's why they were, as we're going to see, that's why this special term which is brought in Zohar about the Avis, ha'avis hein hamerkava, they were the Merkava, they were the chariot to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as we're going to see as we begin the chapter. Yet not everybody is holding there, certainly not as of yet. So in the same token, it's important that this does become part and parcel of our being. So how do we do that? So Alter Rebbe is going to give the suggestion is the way we anchor this is by devoting ourselves to the limud ha-Torah, to learning Torah. And I would just add how appropriate this is. We're learning this chapter in the week before Matan Torah, which is this message is very much aligned with the spirit of the Yontif, being that ultimately it is about bringing Torah into our lives, literally learning Torah with a kviyas, with an established time, and more so not only kviyas bizman but kviyas benefesh, on a daily basis, in an ongoing basis, how Torah ultimately becomes part of our life. And this is because this is what Torah is all about, and therefore this is the way we have the ability to anchor this emunah b'Hashem Echad, which is again elaborated on in the previous chapter. But not only emunah, but that the notion of excitement in Hashem Echad, the sensation of Hashem Echad, would be, again, the way we anchor it is through that kvis itim la Torah, the establishment of times, and namely not only kviyas and zman, kviyas and nefesh, that this becomes a unbudged and untouched time for my learning Torah. And again, as we're going to see in this upcoming chapter, how the Alter Rebbe gets to this idea, how this is in order to anchor this is through limud Torah. So Perek Lamed Dalet, you're able to follow again. It's on page Mem Gimel, the original text, but you're able to continue and to see it on the in the English text accordingly. Again, it's the beginning of chapter 34. V'hine mudazay baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akil midbari. V'hine mudazay, it is known she'avis heinin hamerkava, that the avis of Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov, they were the merkava. What does it mean the merkava? They were the chariot. What does it mean you call them a chariot? What does it mean that the Avraham Yitzchak Yaakov were called a chariot? So let's think about what a chariot. What is a chariot? A chariot is a means for the roche, which means the rider, to go from point A to point B. So he hops onto the chariot and he moves along. Usually it would be let's say a horseman, which would pull the chariot in a particular direction. Or today, in the contemporary times, we have the body of the car, then we have the motor of the car, which pulls the car in a particular direction. So even looking at it today with the way we get from point A to point B, which is usually the vehicle, the car. But let's stick to the Merkava, because the message is the same. I would even say the Merkava usually doesn't have it. It's even easier to understand it with the Merkava. So let's stick to the Merkava, to the chariot. When the roche hops onto the chariot and it starts moving along, so the chariot obviously goes with the roche, the rider. The roche meaning the rider wants to go. That's where the chariot goes. So when the chariot, if you want to think about a state of bittul, which means self-nullification or subordinance of one object to, in this case, the merkava, to the reichiv, to the rider, you can't think of anything so batal, or rather would be a clear, a classic example would be the bittul, the subordinance of the submission of the merkava to the reichiv, the chariot, to the rider. Because wherever the rider wants to go, that's where the chariot is going. It wants to go right, it goes right. It wants to go left, it goes left. It wants to go straight, it'll go straight. So it doesn't even, and more so, it's not only that it follows the desire and solely follows the desire of the rider. It's much more than that. It doesn't even have its own input. It doesn't say, you know what, really, rider, I want to go right. Oh, unfortunately, you want to go left. I got to give in to what you want to do. Where you want to go. I want to stop and you want to go straight. I got to give in. I want to go left, you want to go right, I'm going to give in as well. Because you're the reichev, you're the rider. When you look at a chariot, the chariot doesn't even have its own rotzing. It does not even have its own desire. At all. It's all about the desire of the reichev, the desire of the rider. And therefore, for this very reason, the Avraham are called the Merkava. Which means the reichev, which in this case would be HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which kind of rode upon them. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu had an objective, had a plan, which he wanted to be implemented in this physical world. So he, just like for us to get from point A to point B, we don't do it on our own. We hop into a car, we hop onto a wagon, we hop onto a chariot, which will take us to point B. HaKadosh Baruch Hu had this point B, had this focus, had this objective, that this world should be introduced with Hashem Echad, Dir B'Tachteinim, that a world which on its own does not demonstrate the oneness of Hashem, should demonstrate the oneness of Hashem. So he challenged, or he established Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov to be the Merkava, to be the chariot, to bring Hashem to this point. And that's what they did. Their whole life was involved in demonstrating, disseminating the message of Hashem Echad. But in what way were they bringing Hashem to his objective? It was in a way, this is what the Zohar, the expression of the Zohar, it was in a way of a complete life of self-subordinates and self-nullification, similar to the subordinates and nullification of the Merkava, the chariot to the Rochev. Meaning that whatever Hashem wanted to be done, that's where they brought Hashem to. Whatever Hashem wanted to go, that's where Hashem brought. That's where they brought. Not only they brought Hashem to, or rather wherever, in whatever direction, whatever Hashem wanted from them, automatically they did. In accordance to that, to the spirit of Hashem's Ratz and Hashem's desire. And more so, when you speak about a Merkava, I add the second dimension. It's not only they ultimately submit to the Ratzain of Hashem, or in the mashal, the Ratzin of the Rochev, the Ratzin of the rider, meaning to say, I am reluctant to go right, I really wanted to go left. That's not what the rider, that's not what the carriage, that's not what the chariot is all about. The chariot, when the chariot is on the outset, it just solely does and goes where the rider wants it to go. And similarly, when it comes to Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, everything about them was so buttle. It stood in such a spirit of self-nullification that they didn't even have their own ruts, and it's not like their own ruts. And really, I want to do this, but Hashem, reluctantly, I have to do what you want because you want it, and you're ultimately I'm here for you, and you have a ruts and you have a desire, and therefore I'm going to do what you want me to do. It was not at all like that. They didn't b'chlal have a ratzon. They didn't have any other desire other than doing what Hashem wanted them to do. So the bittul of Merkava is a very deep bittul, meaning to say that it's in a way that on the outset there is no other ratzon. There is only the ratzon of the reichev, the desire of the reichev of the rider. In this case, the ratzon of the ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Which means we all could find ourselves certain times where we submit ourselves to the Ratzon Hashem, when we do any mitzvah. I'm tired, but I'm going to get up to learn Torah. So certainly, we can be the Merkava, we can be the vehicle to which Hashem's Ratzon, Hashem's desire would be ultimately implemented. But we cannot call ourselves a Merkava. We can't accurately use that term. Or not even less than accurate, because many times, or we do have a ratzin, we do want to do different, and unfortunately sometimes we do different than our mandate, because we have a mandate not only in periodic times to express our devotion, our connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shabbos, Yontif, Yom Kippur, Ne'ilah, Purim, and so on, or Chanukah. We have a mandate, we are on call, on duty, 24 hours a day. Every moment, every second, every millisecond, we are in Hashem's arena, and with a mandate to implement everything which is called upon us at the time, obviously every time being different than another. When it's learning, it's davening, but we have the mandate throughout our entire life, every day, every minute, and every second, every millisecond. We have the mandate to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and again, based on the call of the particular hour, but there's no moment which is devoid, no even second or millisecond which is devoid from us, from the call, from the particular mandate which is demanded, again expressed in detail based on the call of that moment, the call of that second. But we're always on duty, we're always on call. And then if you think about it from the way it is, again, this based on this emes, many times not only we have other desires and we reluctantly submit to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but more than that, many times we cross our desire, we allow our desires to override the ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rahman al-Islam. So the Lashon of Merkava is a very unique Lashon, and that's why it doesn't say it about anybody else. Doesn't say about Stam, a good Jew, even though there isn't Stam, a good Jew, it doesn't say it by the average Yid. It says about Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. For all their life, every moment, every second of their life, they were a Merkava to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Or the reason why they were called a Merkava, because every moment they were stood in complete submission to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a way that they didn't even have any other ratzon, they didn't have any other desire. So even by us, even if we would ultimately, in other words, it's not only the fact that we sometimes override Rahman al-Islam, our desire over what Hashem wants, God forbid, and for this we have to work on ourselves to do tshuva and become better and better, and to again fill in those gaps in the times that not only from the times from filling the gaps, we need to say that understand and appreciate that we have a mandate to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu every moment, every second, every millisecond, and to try to fill in that we should completely stay on focused thought and machshava dibur u'maisa, the way it's reflected and focused on Avodas Hashem, the way it's reflected and demanded from us, in not only in action but in speech, and not only in speech but in thought, and not only in mitzvahs hasei in the positive, but also leisesa, to be careful, chas v'shalom, not to violate Hashem's ratzon, Hashem's desire in a mitzvahs leisesa, again maybe in speech, action, or even thought. But even when we do what we're supposed to do, many times it's, I really want to go the other direction, but Hashem, you asked me, I reluctantly will submit myself. Which, in a sense, there's a certain, in the heavens above, appreciation for that as well. That I really wanted from the call of my body and soul, and Nefesh Bahamas, my animal soul, my Yitzhahara, I want to do it like this, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're Adonai Olam, you're the master of the world, so I submit myself. There is something very special about that. But in this context, when we're dealing with Merkava, a chariot, which was that unique term where the Aves have adapted based on their complete submission to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it is very far from that notion. Because Merkava is that I have no desire in the onset, my whole desire is your desire, capital Y. So this was the Merkava. As Alter Rebbe goes on, that all their days they didn't interrupt forever, from the very beginning, throughout their entire life. They didn't interrupt even one moment from connecting their knowledge and their neshama, their mind, their knowledge and their soul to the master of the world, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, bitul hanal, with the above mentioned bittul, above mentioned meaning, that bittul which is elaborated on in the 33rd chapter, which is l'chudi yichudi yisbarach, to the oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Aharon, and following the Avraham Tzaviyach, means their entire life was their complete bittul, their complete self-nullification to that notion. In other words, they had that profound appreciation of Hashem Echad, and everything about them was part of the experience of Hashem Echad. And subsequent Avraham to the Yaakov, all the Nevi'im, all the prophets, each one according to the level of his neshama, and each one according to his hasaga, his appreciation and grasp and understanding in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in that notion of Hashem Echad, also carried that bittul accordingly. The level of Moshe Rabbeinu Olav Hashalom, the greatest prophet of all times, his darga, his level of his submission to HaKadosh Baruch Hu was Eilal Kolana, it was even higher and greater than all the Nevi'im. Based on his profound, again, this bittul comes based, the sense of self-nullification comes based on the appreciation, the understanding, the grasp of this Hashem Echad. So Moshe Rabbeinu Olav Hashalom, which was the greatest Navi, again his greatest, the greatest Navi, meaning to say that he was that contact, that transparent contact he had with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, or that contact we had with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, or that transparency that he appreciated within the Kodesh Baruch Hu, which consequently led to his complete bittul to Hashem, was Eilal Kolana, rose up over the other Nevi'im. Sh'amar Olav, to the extent that the Chazal tell us about Moshe Rabbeinu, Shechina Medaberes Mitech Grein Shel Moshe, that the Shechina, the divine presence, spoke via the throat, literally means the throat of Moshe Rabbeinu. It means when Moshe Rabbeinu spoke, it wasn't that Moshe Rabbeinu was a Mitzias, which is a separate entity, and he just transmitted the word of Hashem, but more than that, Hashem spoke through the throat of Moshe Rabbeinu. Could you think about a greater bittul than that? Bittul meaning self-nullification. This is the quintessence of a merkava. This is the quintessential example of a merkava. Merkava means that it's not that I am and I submit myself to you. I am, on the outset, I am not, and it's only about you. Meaning the divine presence speaks through the grein, through the throat of Moshe Rabbeinu. So it's not there's a Moshe Rabbeinu and he's carrying the message of Hashem. That's not Merkava. That's not the notion of a chariot. The Hashem speaks through the grein of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is not, but it's about it's about Hashem. In Moshe Rabbeinu's mind, it's not about me, it's about Hashem, and when Hashem, I transmit the word of Hashem as Hashem speaking through my God and through my throat. Which demonstrates so clearly, this is again a classic and a clear demonstration of what a Merkava is all about. That it's not me and I carry the message of Hashem. As the Merkava says, I have no other desire. It's wherever the Rochev, the writer, wants to go. He doesn't even think of those terms. He doesn't even think I am going to submit myself to the writer. The Merkava is not. It's only about the writer. Merkava has no mind. It doesn't say that I'm going to, doesn't even acknowledge it's submitting itself to the writer. So it doesn't say I want to go right and you want to go left, we're going to go where you want to go. It doesn't even say I want. There's no I want. It's just what the Reichiv, the rider hops onto the chariot, and it just, wherever the rider wants to go, that's where the chariot goes. There's no I want, and in the very beginning there's no I want. Or I don't want. There is no I. So that's what we say. Moshe Rabbeinu is not only batal to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that he's here to transmit the word of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Am Yisrael and to the generations to come. Moshe Kibul Torah Misinai, or Misara accordingly. But no, Shechina Medaberes Mitech Grein Shel Moshe. From Moshe Rabbeinu's perspective, there is no I at all. It's only about you, Hashem. So the Shechina has to come through Moshe Rabbeinu. Shechina Medaberes Mitech Grein Shel Moshe. And that's what famously Moshe Rabbeinu expressing, in addition to what Torah testifies. Moshe Rabbeinu, he was the honor of Mikol Adam Ashal Pnei Adam, the most humble person. But it's more than that. It's V'nachnu ma, Moshe Rabbeinu famously expressed to Am Yisrael. What? Referring to him and Aaron, what are we? We're ma. We're meaning to say, it's not about us at all. Hence when the Shekhinah has to speak, it goes automatically again via Moshe Rabbeinu. Miteich Grein Shel Moshe. That Rebbe continues, that the Yid merited in the Maimed, in the state of Har Sinai. I must say that this is again, you find Hashgacha Pratis in our learning, many times that it corresponds to the time we're in this year as we're giving this class. It's mamish before Matan Torah, the class before Matan Torah, and we learn about Maimad Har Sinai. If we think about divine providence in everything, how much more so when it comes to Torah in a public, in a shir, which is heard by many. This is interesting that we should mamish the shir before Matan Torah deals with the Maimad Har Sinai, and again ultimately the message of Limud Talmud Torah, Limud Torah, Kviyas Itim, Limud Torah, and so on. So I felt it's worth it to just mention this, the beautiful Hashgacha Pratis, the divine providence, as again it's reflected in this very in this very way. Once again, and the Alter Rebbe continues over here that this was the entire life of Moshe Rabbeinu. But similar to this, the Yidden merited in this time when Hashem gave the Torah in the state of Har Sinai, that they heard Anechi Hashem Lekecha. At that point, that few moments experience, they experienced that very experience of a complete self-subordinance and self-nullification to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There was a complete notion of bittul to the Reichev, in this case to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that there was nothing of self remained, of every single Yid for that matter, which stood at Maimad Har Sinai, at the mountain, listening to Aseres HaDibris. It was only about Hashem. Which means it's not that I am there and let's hear what you have to say. I mean, I'm here sitting at a class in my comfortable chair with my little coffee and so on. It was completely the complete bittul of the complete self-nullification of every single Yid. It was only about the Anechi Hashem Lekecha. That was the experience of Matan Torah. As we know, Torah is not about information, Torah is about transformation. And the high point, the most of the transformation was in the very outset. In the very onset of Matan Torah, when Hashem spoke Anechi Hashem Lekecha, there was nothing else. There was the only what was real or what was there. Not only what was real, but what was there, what was evident, what was overtly evident was the Mitzias, the reality of Hashem Echad. And from the perspective of the Yid, it was a state of complete bittul. So, but Moshe Rabbeinu was throughout in his entire life. By Avraham and Yaakov was throughout their entire life. Similar to this, and even says Mi'enze, it's very interesting. It says, by Moshe Rabbeinu throughout his entire life was greater than even the state of the Yid by Maimad Har Sinai. Because the Alter Rebbe adds Mi'enze. It was still not that. So whatever we can think about the bittul of the Yid by the state of Har Sinai, listening to Hashem Anechi Hashem Lekecha, Hashem the Aseres HaDibros coming from the Anechi, coming from Hashem. Moshe Rabbeinu's entire life, his experience in his relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the entire life was even greater. Because Alter Rebbe says Mi'enze, just a bit of it, similar to it. Which parenthetically, or actually importantly to say, we understand, we get some perspective who a Moshe Rabbeinu is, who a tzaddik is, who a rebbe is. It's not just like he's a bit greater than me, more knowledgeable than me. It's something which is totally different. It's a different idea. And therefore we have to understand that it's not like, he said and I'm going to think a bit different. Moshe Rabbeinu or this tzaddik or this rebbe said, I have a different opinion. It's be'ein Arieh, it's talking about infinite, the difference is infinite, literally. If you look over here, the Alter Rebbe says Me'enze, that the Yid Matan Har Sinai, wasn't he completely absorbed in the divine divinity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the sanctity of Anechi Hashem Lekecha, of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, listening to the energy which came through the Aseres HaDibros via HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He was completely bottled, completely absorbed into that experience. There was no I at all. But yet this is Me'ain, just a bit, a taste of, or similar to. The real deal is the way it comes through the tzaddik, Avraham and Yaakov, or namely Moshe Rabbeinu. And not only Moshe Rabbeinu when he's standing by Har Sinai, Moshe Rabbeinu throughout his entire life. That is what a Rebbe is all about. And naturally there's so much more to say how it ought to reflect on our perception and of what a Moshe Rabbeinu is all about, what a Rebbe is all about. But again, we will go on. It's important just to mention this. because we understand now we understand Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't just the transmitter of the word of Hashem to Am Yisrael, the wise teacher. You can't really describe what a Moshe Rabbeinu is, how intricate Moshe, how important, how vital or understanding what Moshe Rabbeinu is over here with these few lines over here. We understand that Moshe Rabbeinu is not this again a wise teacher which transmit the information of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Am Yisrael, but Moshe Rabbeinu is a nekuda of bittul to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Moshe Rabbeinu's entire life is greater than the moment of the Yid by Har Sinai, which is probably the climactic level that any Yid ever reached throughout all of history, standing in Ma'amad Har Sinai listening to Aseret HaDibros. That's why I would just add, that's why Moshe Rabbeinu becomes an integral part of the whole experience of the Matan Torah. As it says, V'gam b'cho yaminu la'olam, it says in the middle of this whole experience of Matan Torah, Kodesh Baruch Hu makes it a point to say that it's about b'cho yaminu la'olam, v'chol hanavim abayim acharecha, and all the prophets, as Rashi says, based on the Gemara, that Kodesh Baruch Hu was telling Moshe, in you they will believe forever, and it doesn't say licha, that in you that you're going to really be the trustworthy teacher, not to add or deduct it, you're going to be just transmit what Hashem wants you to transmit, but bicha, in you, because Moshe Rabbeinu is a merkava to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So not licha but bicha, and again becomes part of the modus operandi of Matan Torah, because this is also important to understand that the greatest things of all time comes through a Moshe Rabbeinu, including and again throughout all generations. And obviously when we're dealing with Mashiach's coming, it's not the time HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to bring redemption, but redemption through a Mashiach Tzidkenu. Similar to Matan Torah, came through a Moshe Rabbeinu again, but it's a separate, I don't want to go much off over here, it's a separate topic, but again it's important to note this over here when we describe who a Moshe Rabbeinu was. So getting back to it, Al Rebbe's message over here, Me'ein Zazachi Yisrael B'Ma'amad Har Sinai, similar to this, Yidden merited in the time of Har Sinai, in the state of Har Sinai, which was, again, this idea that in those moments, Yidden kind of became that Merkava. The only thing is, like, they could not tolerate it. That Azal tells, they could not comprehend that enormous energy. At the time of Har Sinai, like the Razal, that our sages of blessed memory says, note that every one of Hashem's diburim, which means every one of the Aseret HaDibros, the 10 Commandments, their neshama has left them, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu needed to again revitalize them, resurrect every single Yid, because they could not tolerate, they could not comprehend this enormous energy which came through every one of the Aseret HaDibros. Parucha nishmas, and their soul has completely left them. So they stood in a state of self-nullification, but it went a bit too far. It was so powerful, it was so potent, the godly energy which exists in every one of the Aseret HaDibros, that they literally expired. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to again resurrect and revitalize them by every single one of the Aseret HaDibros, this is the Shu'inyan Bittul B'Mitzias. And now, in other words, this was a step of their expression as well of their self-nullification to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that not only that I am not consciously, but they physically, literally expired. So it's not that they're holding greater than Avraham, Avinu, Yitzchak, Yaakov, or Moshe Rabbeinu, because Moshe Rabbeinu was able to maintain his composure, and the Yid then completely expired. But quite on the contrary, their container was a limited container, and therefore they could not comprehend the enormous energy which came through every one of the Aseret HaDibros, and therefore they physically expired. As opposed to Moshe Rabbeinu, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, their keli, their vessel, they were so great, they had the ability to be and not to be in the same moment. And more so, as mentioned before, throughout their entire life. Every day, every moment, every second, every millisecond. So they were able to contain this enormous energy and again maintain their composure, but in the same token, everything was about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it was not about them at all. So there was the not to be, they were able to be, but everything about that be was not to be, as opposed to the Yid, their bittul extended, because again they did not have the adequate container to contain this enormous energy, and therefore their soul has left them. They completely expired, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to resurrect them by every single one again, by every single one of the Sesadibris, and therefore as the Chazal tell us, when they relate to us the whole experience of Aseret HaDibris. Yet, we understand that the message is ultimately that there should not be, yes, in other words, yes, to be, as much as the message, the ultimate message is the not to be. It's not about the I am not, but I am not in a way that I still, I'm here, and I exist. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted a dira b'tachtenim that we should not expire, because if we expire, so we're not at all, we don't exist. And if we don't exist, in other words, physically expire, Rahman al-Islam, we don't exist, so who's doing the job? In other words, the job is not being done, and we're diverting from the message of Hashem Echad. Hashem wanted it should be a dira b'tachtenim, which means that we should be, in other words, the tachtein, this physical world, starting from ourselves, we should exist, yet the godly message and reality should penetrate and inculcate our entire mitzias. So how do those things come together? When the Yid experienced a bit of that, the godly energy which came through Anei Hashem Lekech, came through that Aseret HaDibris, and finally they reached that in the sense of bittul, which that's the ultimate objective, that sense of self-nullification. But the problem was that it went a bit too far, that Paruch Nishmas, and they completely expired. And the message is that we should remain, be able to maintain our composure, meaning to say we should exist and be alive, and not expire, yet the Hashem Echad should pervade every part of us. So what has to be done? In other words, how do we keep that balance when we introduce ourselves to the Hashem Echad, to the core of Hashem Echad, the way it came through via the Aseret HaDibros, the Yid expired. So what was the suggestion? So it says, that's why he continues over here, and that's why by Moshe Rabbeinu, right after Matan Torah, what did he do? He said, we can't compromise on the message, but we have to do something in order that there should be the container to contain that message. And therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu immediately told him to make a dwelling place for Hashem, which was again the tabernacle, which was the Mishkan, the physical edifice, and in there, Obey Kodesh HaKadoshim, and in that physical edifice, which was the Mishkan, there was the Kodesh HaKadoshim, Kodesh HaKadoshim, which is again the different holy states within, domain within this physical edifice, till ultimately you have the Holy of Holies. Now what is in the Kodesh HaKadoshim? You have the Hashras, Shechinase, you have the dwelling place of the Shechinah itself, which is Gilu Yichudis Baruch Mishbar L'Kaman, which is the revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's oneness. In that physical domain. So the purpose and the objective of the Mishkan is to anchor this Hashem Echad. And not to have this dichotomy of it's Hashem Echad, so I expire, everything expires, and the world does not have the ability to contain this, so what's the point? Yet we cannot compromise on the message, because then you don't have the entire Hashem Echad, the entire message and energy and the potency of Hashem Echad permeating this physical world. So we're missing the point of Dina B'Tachtenim. So Moshe Rabbeinu felt that the way to put it together, to not to compromise on the potency of the message, yet together with that it should be able to be anchored and to maintain a healthy structure, means to say maintain its existence in the conscious reality of Elam Hazeh. So therefore Moshe Rabbeinu says, build this edifice, and the edifice we are going to have the ability to bring the Hashras HaShechinah, the dwelling, the divine presence in this physical edifice. Because especially as we know, in the Kodesh HaKadoshim there was the Gilu Yichudis Baruch. Yichudis Baruch is everywhere. The oneness of HaKadosh Baruch is everywhere. Eined Milvadi, everywhere, anywhere, and any time. This was the message of the 33rd chapter. And we have to try to uncover it, and we have to try to point this out in every single situation and understand that it's about Hashem Echad. The world doesn't even have its own entity. It remains one entity. The only thing is, when in the Mishkan, and again our purpose is to take the message from that Kodesh HaKadoshim and bring it through the entire world, but the Kodesh HaKadoshim was, on the outset, it was the message was overt, the message was apparent, it was manifest, the Yichud Baruch. For that matter, it even manifested itself physically as well. And it's important to note over here what happened in the Kodesh Kodashim. It's a Gemara, which the Gemara says just to appreciate what does it mean, Gili, that God's Yichud could become in the state of complete manifestation. You think about the Arin. It says Mokim, the Arin, which is again the place of the Arin, which was in the Kodesh Kodashim, the Holy of Holies. And you think about the Arin, the Gemara says Mokim ha'arin eino min hamida. The place of the Arin was beyond measurement. And it's just fascinating because in essence, because we are comprised of time and place, the human mind cannot comprehend and on what happened in the Kodesh Kodashim. As the human mind cannot appreciate this adequately, it's mind-boggling. But let's just see what the Gemara says. The Gemara says the Mokim ha'arin eino min hamida. We know the Kodesh Kodashim was 10 by 10 ames, cubits, 10 by 10 cubits. The Arin itself, I believe, was 1.5 by 2.5. I went blank on the exact measurement, but let's say it was 2.5. If you think about 2.5, take it from the side of the 2.5, which was the length from one side to the wall of the Kodesh HaKodashim, it should have been 2.5 as an example, or less. It should have been 3 3/4 from one side, 3 3/4 from the other side, because this is the Aron itself is 2.5. Yet if it says, I believe it's 3 3/4. If I'm not mistaken, right? 2 and 3 3/4, and then again 2.5 equals 10. Equals 10, correct? So so if you took, but yet the Gemara says if you took a measuring tape from the wall to the Arin, it was completely. You had 5 cubits. From the other side of the Arin to the wall was as well 5 cubits. You measured from one side of the wall to the Kodesh Kodashim to the other side, same other side of the wall. It wasn't 12.5, it was exactly 10. So 10 from one side to the other, 5 from one side of from that wall to the Arin, and then another 5 from the end of the Arin to the wall. Meaning to say the Mokim ha'arin eino min hamida, the Arin was a tangible keli. It was one of the Klei Mishkan, and eventually became the Klei Mishkan. In the very beginning, the first base of Mikdash. Yet Mokim ha'arin eino min hamida didn't take place. Physically, it didn't take place. We can't even understand it. We can't appreciate it because it's a mind-boggling idea. But that's how it was. And this is the notion of Gilu Yichudei Yisbarach, the revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yichud meaning to say, the notion is the oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu was manifest overtly in the Kodesh Kadosh. So this was the point of Moshe Rabbeinu, to make to anchor the Shekhinah in a way that the entire potency, the entire energy of Hashem Echad should be manifest. In other words, it should come down, which would be no compromise on the revelation of Hashem Echad, yet it would be the container. And that was the purpose of the Mishkan. Again, as we see chronologically in the Torah, that came in continuation of the Matan Torah, because Matan Torah, as much as it accomplished the complete and absolute bittul of the Yitzhak HaKadosh Baruch Hu, yet nonetheless there was no keli, there was no container. Therefore, Parcha Nishmas, and the Neshamas left. In other words, they physically expired. They weren't able to maintain their composure as human beings. Again, would carry the message of Hashem Echad. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, let's broaden the scope of this keli, and let's build a Mishkan. And in the Mishkan, there would be the different levels of Kedusha, ultimately to the Kodesh HaKodashim, where there you had the dwelling of the divine presence, again in a very revealed and manifest manner. And we will stop over here, but yet what the Rebbe is getting at, ultimately, as the Chazal tell us, when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, so what is the container for the Ashras HaShechina? The container of Ashras HaShechina, the divine dwelling place of the divine presence, is through learning Torah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, when the Beis HaMikdash, the Chazal tell us rather, that when this destroyed, Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, HaKadosh Baruch Hu only has in His world the Daled Amis Shel Halacha, the 4 cubits of Halacha, which means the notion of learning Torah, which again, the message of the Alter Rebbe is in this chapter, subsequent, again, in continuation of this message, of this explanation of the Ashras HaShechina, the Mishkan, which came subsequent to the experience, or consequent to the experience of Matan Torah. In our life, the way we anchor the Shechina is through establishing times on a daily basis of learning Torah with this we ultimately bring the Shekhinah down, without compromising the Yichud of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And again, I'm saying this very brief. The Alter Rebbe is explaining and elaborate. God willing, in the next class, we'll elaborate exactly how the Alter Rebbe translates or explains us this Maimed Azal, even though it's pretty clear based on the Maimed Azal that Azal telling us when the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed, HaKadosh Baruch Hu only has the 4 cubits of the halacha, but the Alter Rebbe is going to take it and again expand it and explain how this, establishing our Kviyasitim B'Limud HaTorah on a daily basis, how this is ultimately, we have the schus to ultimately be the host of the Shekhinah via our establishing our Torah learning every morning, every night, again based on the quota which is given to every single yid, in as it's explained and as it's mandated from us in the halachas of Talmud Torah. So again, as we prepare ourselves to Matan Torah, there's no question that primarily it's a time for each one of us to, on its own merit, we're receiving the Torah to be careful firstly with the established times for Limud HaTorah, which we already have established, to make sure that we keep to them. And again, not only kviyus bisman, not only a kviyus and a establishment in time, but more so kviyus benefesh, meaning to say that we should be very careful that if we have a time of learning Torah, we should come on time and invest all the time, close off everything and invest. If it's 45 minutes, if it's an hour and 20 minutes, if it's a half an hour, that time has to be completely devoted to the learning, to the subject of Torah which you're learning at the time. But more so, as we say, we would stand over here, that this is a time which we're able to host the Shekhinah, similar to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies, which hosted the Shekhinah overtly in a very complete and 100% transparent and manifest way. We have the ability in our learning Torah to do so, and that's why it's such a sacred time. It's such a important and crucial time. So again, especially as we stand before Matan Torah, this is a time to make all the achlatas, the important resolutions that in our commitment to learning Torah, to Torah learning, to keep to our resolutions of the past, and more so make healthy resolutions in preparation to Matan Torah for the following year. In our times, in our set times, to be honest with ourselves, how much more time ultimately we can learn Torah, and to make appropriate resolutions in the spirit, and namely to make achlatas, a resolution to keep to them throughout the entire year, again to making ourselves a keli to the ashras hashchina, to the dwelling of the divine presence. May it be even before Matan Torah that not only we should be able to host the Shekhinah by our learning Torah, but we should ultimately see the third Beis Hamikdash b'mheira v'yameinu, again, hopefully even before Matan Torah, should be able to experience the ashras hashchina the way it comes through the Beis Hamikdash Shlishi. Have a wonderful night.